The house always sounded louder when everyone was quiet. The ceiling fan turned lazily, slicing the warm air into uneven breaths, while the distant hum of traffic slipped through half-open windows like a memory trying to return. She sat at the edge of the couch, hands folded too tightly in her lap, shoulders drawn inward as if her body already knew it needed to disappear. They were all there. Her husband's friends. They filled the room without touching anything, without saying much, yet somehow taking up all the space. Their laughter arrived in low bursts, cutting short when she shifted, when her bangles made the faintest sound, when her presence reminded them she existed. She felt it before she understood it. The way their eyes passed over her, not as a woman, not even as a person, but as something tolerated. Something owned. Something that didn't deserve softness. Her husband sat among them, relaxed, familiar, unaware. Or maybe aware and choosing not to see. His arm rested casually on the back of the chair, his smile easy, his world intact. Hers was not. She told herself not to overthink. She always did. But the weight in her chest had learned her name, had learned where to settle, had grown comfortable there. A comment floated through the air, half joke, half insult. Not loud, not direct. Enough to sting, not enough to accuse. She lowered her eyes. That was how it always happened. No one ever touched her. No one ever had to. Because the damage lived in tone, in glances, in the way silence leaned closer when they spoke about her as if she weren't there. Like she was less than human. Like she was something to be endured. She stood quietly and moved toward the kitchen, each step measured, controlled. Her reflection in the dark microwave door looked unfamiliar, eyes dulled, lips pressed thin, spine bent under something invisible. In the kitchen, she exhaled. The sink became her anchor. Cool porcelain under her fingers. A place to breathe without being watched. Or so she thought. From the corner of her eye, she sensed it. Someone standing in the doorway. Not watching her the same way the others did. He didn't speak. Didn't smile. Didn't look away either. He simply existed there, still and uncertain, as if he hadn't meant to interrupt whatever fragile moment she was holding together. Their eyes met for a second too long. Something passed between them. Recognition, maybe. Or guilt. Or the quiet knowledge of witnessing something you were never supposed to see. He was one of them. And yet, not. She turned back to the sink, embarrassed by the sudden heat in her throat. The water ran, though there were no dishes left to wash. Behind her, his footsteps retreated. But the moment stayed. Later that night, after the laughter faded and the door finally closed behind the last guest, the house returned to its hollow stillness. Her husband went to bed without asking if she was okay, without noticing the way she lingered behind, gathering the remains of the evening like broken glass. She stepped out onto the balcony. The city below pulsed softly, lights breathing in and out, distant and indifferent. She crouched down, the cold concrete grounding her, and without fully knowing why, she reached for the chalk she kept tucked away in a small tin. Her fingers trembled as she drew it. A circle. Not perfect. Never perfect. A habit from childhood. A secret ritual. A promise she once made to herself, that inside this line, nothing could hurt her. That inside this shape, she was safe. Human. Whole. She sat inside it, knees pulled close, forehead resting against them. The tears came silently. From somewhere behind her, the balcony door creaked. She didn't turn around. I didn't mean to intrude, a voice said softly. It was him. The one who had stood in the kitchen doorway. The one who had seen her without stripping her down to nothing. She stayed still, as if movement might break whatever fragile boundary existed between them. What's that? He asked, gently, nodding toward the chalk. She swallowed. Just something old. He didn't laugh. Didn't question. Didn't step closer. I won't cross it, he said instead. Her breath caught. For the first time in a long while, someone had noticed where she drew her line, and respected it. She looked up at him then, really looked. His expression wasn't curious. It was careful, heavy with something unspoken. The night air wrapped around them, thick with words neither of them was ready to say. And inside the circle, for the first time in years, she felt seen. The night did not end when he stepped back inside. It lingered. Long after the balcony door closed, long after the chalk circle blurred under the slow pressure of her heel, the feeling remained, quiet, unfamiliar, unsettling in its gentleness. She lay awake beside her husband, staring at the ceiling as his breathing settled into an easy rhythm. His sleep came quickly, untouched by the weight she carried. In the darkness, she replayed the moment again and again, not his words, but his restraint. I won't cross it. No one had ever said that to her before. Not with actions. Not with meaning. Morning arrived softly, gray light filtering through thin curtains, settling across the room like a question without an answer. She rose early, moving carefully, as if the floor itself might accuse her of something she hadn't done. The house smelled of leftover laughter and unspoken damage. In the mirror, she paused. Her eyes looked different, not healed, not hopeful, but alert. As if something inside her had shifted its position, turning slightly toward the light. The day unfolded slowly. Later, she found herself alone again, seated at the dining table with a cup of tea growing cold between her palms. Outside, the world continued with its careless certainty. Inside, she waited, though she didn't know for what. The doorbell rang. Her heart responded before her mind could. When she opened the door, it was him. He stood there awkwardly, hands loose at his sides, eyes steady but unsure. Not confident, not intrusive, just present. I left my jacket here last night, he said, almost apologetically. She nodded, stepping aside to let him in. The air changed immediately. Not dramatically, not sharply, just enough to be felt. He followed her into the living room, stopping short when he noticed the faint chalk marks still visible near the balcony door. Smudged now. Imperfect. Real. You don't have to explain, he said quietly. She hadn't planned to speak. But something about the way he said it, like permission, unlocked a door she'd been holding shut for too long. It's a place, she said slowly, choosing each word as if it might collapse under the wrong weight. Where I remember who I am. He absorbed that without interruption. She handed him the jacket. Their fingers brushed accidentally, just for a second, and the contact sent a strange warmth up her arm, quick, unwelcome, undeniable. Both of them noticed. Neither of them moved. I'm sorry, he said, too quickly. She shook her head. It's fine. But it wasn't. Not because the touch was wrong. But because it felt right in a way she had forgotten existed. He lingered, hesitating, then gestured gently toward the balcony. May I? She considered him for a moment. The risk. The line. The unspoken rule tightening around her chest. Then she nodded. Outside, the city hummed again, unchanged. The chalk circle waited faintly on the concrete, a ghost of itself. He stayed outside it, just as he had promised. Why did they treat you like that? He asked softly, not accusing, not dramatic. Just honest. The question landed gently, and still hurt. She looked away, fingers curling around her own wrist. Because it's easier than seeing me. He said nothing, but his silence didn't dismiss her. It held her words carefully, like something fragile. You don't deserve it, he said finally. The simplicity of the sentence broke something open inside her. No defense. No explanation. No justification. Just truth. Her voice wavered when she spoke again. You're his friend. I know. And this is wrong. I know that too. Their eyes met, tension stretching thin and quiet between them, not desire, not yet, but recognition. Two people standing too close to something dangerous to name. She stepped back into the circle. Not as an invitation. As a boundary. He noticed immediately. I should go, he said, though his feet didn't move. Yes, she agreed. And still, neither of them turned away. For a moment, the world narrowed to breath and distance. Inches filled with everything they were not saying. Before leaving, he spoke again, voice lower now, heavier. If you ever need someone to remember you're human, I'll listen. From wherever you need me to stand. Her throat tightened. He left without another word. That night, she redrew the circle more carefully than before. Not because she felt unsafe. But because something inside her had begun to wake up, and she wasn't sure yet whether it was strength, or temptation. Days passed, but they did not loosen their grip. Time moved forward the way it always did, appointments kept, meals prepared, conversations answered with the right expressions at the right moments. On the surface, nothing changed. Yet beneath that careful rhythm, something unnamed continued to grow, quiet and persistent, like a second heartbeat she hadn't agreed to carry. She became more aware of silence. Not the absence of sound, but the presence of meaning inside it. Her husband spoke at her, not with her. His words skimmed the surface of her existence, never dipping low enough to notice the tension in her shoulders, the way her answers had shortened, the way her eyes lingered elsewhere when she thought no one was watching. And when his friends came again, she felt it immediately, the familiar shrinking of space, the old instinct to make herself smaller. All except one. He watched differently now. Not openly. Not protectively. But attentively, as if he were listening to something beneath the noise, tracking a frequency only he could hear. When a remark edged too close to cruelty, his jaw tightened. When laughter sharpened into something ugly, his gaze flickered toward her, not to claim, not to intrude, but to check. Are you still here? It unsettled her, because being seen had started to matter. That evening, she retreated to the balcony earlier than usual, chalk already waiting in her palm. The circle came easily this time, her hand steadier, the line more deliberate. She sat within it, spine straight, eyes closed. The city breathed around her. You draw it like it's learning you, his voice said softly behind her. She didn't startle. I thought you weren't coming today, she replied, opening her eyes. I wasn't sure I should, he admitted. He stood where he always did, outside the circle, respecting the space without being asked. The boundary had become a language between them. Why did you? She asked. He hesitated, then answered honestly. Because I kept thinking about whether you were okay. The words landed gently, and stayed. She pressed her fingers into the concrete. That's dangerous. I know. They shared a quiet, weighted look. The kind that carried consequences. Sometimes, she said slowly, I think the circle isn't for keeping others out. It's for reminding myself I'm allowed to take up space. His expression softened, something in his eyes shifting, not desire, not yet, but understanding layered with restraint. You do, he said. Take up space, even when they pretend you don't. Her breath caught. The wind moved between them, cool and deliberate, brushing her hair across her cheek. She didn't fix it right away. Neither of them looked away. What happens, she asked quietly, when the circle isn't enough? The question wasn't innocent. He heard it. He answered carefully. Then you decide whether to make it bigger, or step outside it. Her chest tightened. Stepping outside meant risk. Exposure. Being seen without protection. She stood slowly, her feet brushing the chalk line, but not crossing it. He noticed. Always noticed. I won't make you choose, he said. I won't even suggest it. That's worse, she whispered. Because it made the choice hers. Their closeness changed then, not physically, but emotionally. The space between them felt charged, like the moment before rain breaks the sky open. Words hovered, heavy and unfinished. She thought of her life, the role she played, the shape she had been pressed into, the quiet erosion of self that had happened so gradually she hadn't screamed when it began. She looked at him, really looked, and saw something dangerous. Someone who could see her whole, and still stay. You should go, she said again, though her voice lacked conviction. He nodded, pain flickering briefly across his face. Before I do, he said, there's something I need you to know. Her pulse quickened. I don't see you the way they do, he continued. And I never will. The air felt too thin. That doesn't make this right, she replied. No, he agreed, but it makes it honest. He stepped back, increasing the distance this time, as if he were the one drawing a line now. At the door, he paused. If the circle ever feels too small, he said without turning around, remember, you didn't imagine your worth. You remembered it. When he was gone, she erased part of the circle with her heel. Not all of it, just enough to let the night in. She stood there long after, heart unsteady, knowing that something irreversible had already begun, not in action, but in truth. And once truth enters, it never leaves quietly.